you had an interesting write-up of some new polling on President Biden and the way voters perceive his gun policy performance so far. And it's actually down pretty substantially from the last time this was polled, if you want to tell us some of those results.
Yeah, his approval is down 7 points in a month. And now, look, this is one poll. So just to be clear, like this, you can't take too much in the individual points that he moves in these polls. He's been around the low 30% in in this poll. This is a YouGov Economist poll, but also in the AP. And there have been a number of polls that have found his approval rating on guns in particular to be quite low around the 30%. This one's at 29%. So it matches. He hasn't been that low in this poll since July of last year, which is, significant. And it also, not just that his approval rating is down, it's also, there's a number of things about this poll I think make it noteworthy, right? It's, his numbers are way down, but also they are among the worst performance on any issue. He's actually the second worst performance in that poll to immigration. So more Americans approve of how he's handled the economy or inflation or things like that than they do of how he's handled guns. His approval on guns is well below his overall approval rating. I think it's like 9 or 10 points below his overall approval rating, which is not very good, as I think people already have a good understanding of by this point. His approval ratings are quite bad generally, but they're particularly bad on this issue. And then also guns was not the top issue. That was still inflation in this poll, but it was, I think, about 8% had it as their most important issue, which puts it right somewhere in the middle of the pack. It's not a low tier issue for most people. It's above even things like abortion or civil rights, or there's a number of common big ticket issues where guns are polling above that. And so I think it speaks to the challenge that he has if he wants to win re-election, and also it's an indication that what he's tried to do so far has not persuaded most people, the vast majority of people, that he's taking the right path. And look, I think it's not just about gun owners being upset with him, although, if you look at the breakdown in the various subgroups, certainly Republicans and conservatives have the lowest approval on this issue of anyone. Now they're going to have most of these issues. You're going to see a huge disconnect between conservatives and liberals and Republicans and Democrats, right? This is how polling on politicians works now. If you look at Trump's numbers, you'll see the same thing. But also he's not doing well with independents, which is a big problem. And he's not doing that well with Democrats, right? This is one of the big things that's haunted him for a while now, is that, he's got, I think his 55% of Democrats approved of how he's handled guns. That's not very good. Traditionally, like usually, I think you should see your own party approving of you as an incumbent president at a much higher rate than that. If you look at, for instance, what they say who they're going to vote for, he's getting like 85% of Democrats or higher, just like Trump is getting at this point, around that percentage as well of Republicans. And so if you've got like 30% of your base who says they might vote for you, but they don't like how you handle guns. And then almost nobody in the Republican Party likes how you handle guns. That's how you get an approval rating this low.
Yeah, no, it sort of speaks to how he's sort of caught between a rock and a hard place on gun policy, because he hasn't had the numbers in Congress to get like the hardware bans, the big ticket items that the Democratic base really wants done.
Right.
But he's done little piecemeal things like ATF regulations that we've covered extensively. He launches an Office of Gun Violence Prevention, sort of more, not that they're not big deals, but they're more niche issues that I don't think you're your normie voter who's not super plugged into this stuff even recognizes. But at the same time, it pisses off the people that do know. They do see this as big overstepping on gun policy if you're a conservative or a gun rights type of voter. So you're not satisfying the people that that would otherwise support you in your endeavors on gun policy, but you're also alienating the folks that don't want to see you do anything at all in the restrictive direction on guns. And I think that probably speaks to what you're seeing in these numbers.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening. Most of the big items that he's done that have a real impact are not things that the average Democrat or the average gun control supporter understands or knows about. Most of them don't know what a pistol brace is, right? But people who own pistol braces sure know what they are and don't like that they've been, in a lot of cases that they've been turned into felons essentially, because most people did not comply with the ATF's reclassification of those devices. And so you have there's a disconnect with how much that's going to impact, people's approval of your handling of the issue. Because people who might like the idea of more gun restrictions, or who do like the idea of more gun restrictions, might not know that this thing happened. Whereas people who don't like the policy, they definitely know. And it's certainly would be dragging down Biden's numbers with them. I also think that there's beyond that stuff, which we've talked a lot about, right, over the last couple of years here. You also have the effect of crime and mass shootings on all this, because those are the things that I think the general public, with the way a lot of media cover the guns, that's what they think of most when they asked about guns. Unless you're a gun owner yourself, that's probably where your mind goes to. And the problem for Biden is, while he may have, he got a gun control bill passed, as we just talked about with the situation with Gonzalez and Herrera. But I don't think moderates or people who aren't super plugged into the issue are looking at this favorably either, because he hasn't really touted that. He's still focused on things he wants to do, like the assault weapons ban. That's still the primary thing he talks about in the State of the Union or any public message he's putting out about guns, which is something he didn't accomplish. And that is highly controversial too. But also, he doesn't really highlight in those spaces, the State of the Union doesn't focus on the things he accomplished that maybe would appeal to more moderate people who aren't high info on the issue. And then he also has the problem, as I said before, with crime, because the murder rate went way up under his administration. Now, whether that's a result of his policies or the pandemic, whatever you want to pin it on, murder rate went way up. Mass shootings have continued to be at the top of mind. We actually haven't seen any that fit the gun violence archive, the Violence Project's definition. The Gun Violence Archive, obviously much lower definition. And even there's been a severe decline in mass shootings in that count too. So this year has done, lately things have been getting better on the issue, but and the murder rate went way down last year in 2023, a huge decline in the murder rate, but people tend to notice those things less than the big increases. It's very similar to the inflation problem, right, I think, that he's facing, where it's like people noticed when the murder rate went way up. Right. That was top of mind for everyone for a long time. And it was a lot of media attention on that, understandably so. Same thing with inflation. People really noticed when the prices started going up and kept going up and up and up. And now inflation has cooled down and the murder rate has come back down, but they're both still worse than they were for one. The murder rate has come back down, but it's not quite, we're not back at, 2015, mid 2010s levels where it was, near historic lows. We're probably it seems like we're on the trend to get back there, but I think the increase sticks in people's mind and the improvements haven't been good enough to sway a lot of your average voters on, how Biden has handled the issues. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, I think that's interesting, especially the point about him because you're right. He doesn't really tout what he's done on guns much. It's always, we need to ban assault weapons. We need to ban magazines. So, and
it's
I
always
think
things that he hasn't done that he wants
Right.
Congress to do, and they're
And I
not
think
going to get done before the election either.
right. And that reinforces in voters' minds that it's, hey, it hasn't been done yet. It hasn't accomplished it yet. If you're someone that supports those policies, it reinforces in their minds that that's, well, haven't
And
done
if
it
you're
yet.
somebody who doesn't support them, you know, obviously him saying he wants to ban your guns all the time is not going to make you approve of him very much.
Yeah, that's a good point for sure.
So I think that's the dynamic at play.